Networking your community for impact. We're going to be looking at positioning ourselves for the harvest. Part one is going to be what I call the Jericho dynamic. And part two is going to be the dynamic of the 70. I see an interesting verse when we look at the taking of Jericho in Joshua chapter 6. It says this, "And Jericho was all shut up because of the children of God. None could come in and none can come out." Isn't that an amazing statement? Talking about making an impact on a community, talking about changing the spiritual climate, talking about taking the kingdoms of man into the kingdoms of God. I believe that's what Jericho's all about. But in order to understand this position, it's just what it is. I think there's so much to learn from that 6th chapter of Joshua for taking the city and entering into the promise, positioning ourselves for the harvest. I quoted Joshua 6:1. Could you imagine that your city could be all shut up, or in other words, controlled, transformed, changed because of the children of God? Okay, in context, the children of God's children then, the children of Israel, and now you as God's children, where you live. And that none could come in or none could come out without some type of, I believe, allowance of God, without some type of conviction. There's something different about this city. There's something I like about this city. Let me just throw this in. Southern Living Magazine said our city, our little town of 18,000, is the best kept secret in the South. It wasn't always so. There was all kind of occult bookstores. There was a lot of stores out of business, boarded up. And I remember green behind the ears as a young pastor 22 years ago, being in this first little building I was at with 15 senior citizens and a bunch of a handful of wild young people. And you know, I got a notice from a prominent businessman who was a godly man. He said, "Welcome to the community. I know you're a new pastor to church there, and I know there's going to be a commission meeting coming on. They want to bring some girlish bookstores and other dance clubs downtown DeLand, our county seat, right down the street from our university where the kids walk." I said, "What?" He said, "Could you see if you can muster some of that small flock of yours and be at the meeting tonight?" I said, "Sure." Made some phone calls. There was no cell phones then. There was no emails. And we showed up with other believers at this courthouse or city hall. And at the end of the meeting, they had the attorney and they had the businessman that wanted to bring his plan, want to have an ordinance change to have these girly shows and I guess these pornography shops and whatever into our city. And I said, this can't be. So I sat there, tried to listen, tried to pay attention. I was a little nervous. And at the end, they allowed anybody who filled out a small 4x6 card to have something to say something. I wasn't on the agenda, but I was able to fill that card. And I stood up. Now, I mentioned earlier about finding some spiritual roots of your city, standing on the shoulders of maybe those who went before us. And you know what I found out? I was reminded of something that somebody told me before I ever came to that city. That John B. Stetson and Henry DeLand built that city on faith, hope, and charity. They wanted something great for that city. And as I got on the docket to speak to those city commissioners, my knees knocking, I saw the city seal, a crimson red heart, a cross, and an anchor. And when it came to my turn, it says, "Gentlemen, you sure you want this stuff in the city that you're possibly allowing? Turn around and look at the picture of John B. Stetson. Look at the picture of Henry DeLand. Now look at the city charter seal, 1882, a crimson red heart, a cross, and an anchor. If you violate the historical precedent of this city, the shame, the discouragement is going to come to this city because of your decision tonight. How's that going to make history look back at you? Please vote against this. We don't need this in a city of faith, hope, and charity." I'll share the next part of that story shortly.